I didn't come out here to disappear. I came to get paid. That's the truth. The job sounded weird, sure, but I've worked weirder. I've sat in security booths behind shopping malls that didn't exist anymore. I've done night shifts for warehouses that didn't ship anything. So when this contract came in saying I'd be paid triple the usual rate to watch over a town no one lived in, I didn't hesitate. Not even when the email said the location would be provided only after I signed. Not even when the paperwork included a clause I had never seen before. One that said all external contact would be restricted, even in emergencies. The envelope had no return address. The instructions were typed on a single page. Report for pickup at a private hangar just outside Tucson. No name, no company, just coordinates. I showed up with a duffel bag, a week's worth of food, and my doubts packed between my socks. The man who met me didn't introduce himself. He didn't shake my hand. He just opened the passenger door and said, "You're the replacement." I asked what happened to the last guy. He looked at the horizon and said, "Didn't leave the right way." We drove in silence. No road signs, no cell service. The sky was too quiet. No birds, no planes. Just a slow, steady wind that didn't move the dust, just carried it. I kept checking my watch, but the time never made sense. At one point the sun was behind us, then it was in front of us again like we'd turned, except we hadn't. It was flat desert in every direction, and nothing had changed. But the air started to feel heavier, not humid, just wrong, like pressure without weight, like something watching from underground. That's when the driver finally spoke again. "You'll feel it," he said, "before you see it." A few minutes later, we crested a ridge, and there it was, a town that shouldn't have been there. One main street, a handful of buildings slouched in the sand. There was a diner with no glass in the windows, a gas station whose roof had caved in, a chapel leaning like its foundation forgot what upright meant. In the middle of it all, a trailer, black, clean, out of place. The man stopped the car, turned to me, and handed me a key, a water bottle, and a small sealed envelope. "Don't open that unless the sun rises from the wrong side," he said. Then he drove off. I didn't see where the road went after that. I don't think it went anywhere. The trailer was cool inside, too cool for the desert. The power worked, the lights hummed. There was a surveillance desk with 4 monitors, a narrow cot, a small fridge, and a stack of paperwork that wasn't addressed to anyone. I looked out the window, then back at the monitors. The cameras showed every corner of the town, like they were waiting for something to step back into frame. That night, I sat at the desk watching dust move across cracked pavement. Around midnight, I noticed one of the monitors flicker, just a single stutter, a blink. The chapel's feed had reversed. Everything in the frame flipped like someone had turned the image around. I tried to adjust it, but there were no controls. I turned to grab the rule packet I'd left on the desk, and that's when I saw it. In the reflection of the dark screen beside me, there was someone standing behind my shoulder. I turned. Nothing there. Just cold air and the sound of the trailer settling. But the reflection had been detailed. Tall figure, long coat. No face I could make out. Just presence. I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared. Not yet. It just didn't feel like night ended. Like time stopped cycling. My watch still ticked, but it never changed. When I stepped outside in the morning, the air felt thinner. The sky was bright, but the light was wrong. The shadows pointed the same way no matter where I stood. The chapel door was open. I hadn't touched it. The rules said not to go inside unless invited, but no one ever mentioned the door could open itself. I walked toward it, just to check. I didn't step inside, just stood at the threshold and looked. The pews had been rearranged. They were in a circle now, not rows. And on the pulpit, a single playing card rested, face down, I backed away slowly, returned to the trailer, and locked the door behind me. When I got back to the desk, there was a card on the cushion of my chair. The Queen of Hearts. Its edges were singed. No message, no explanation. I didn't sit for hours, just stood in the trailer, listening to things that weren't quite sounds, like air trying to form words and failing. That night, I walked the town, just once around. The diner was still empty. The gas station pumps had new scratches on them, symbols I didn't recognize. At the chapel, I felt it again, that pressure in the air, like something holding its breath. I turned to walk away, and there, on the hood of the rusted truck beside the trailer, was another card. The Two of Spades. This one had something written on it. My name. Not printed, written, in ink that hadn't dried yet. I hadn't told anyone my name. I went back inside, shut off the lights, and sat at the desk with both cards in front of me. I held them side by side. They didn't feel like playing cards. The weight was wrong. The surface was warm. Not freshly warm, alive warm. I put them in the drawer and didn't open it again for the rest of the night. The next morning, the trailer clock was blank. The monitors were off. The only light came from the cracks around the door. When I stepped outside, the sun was rising from the west. Not the sky behind the chapel, behind the diner. I didn't open the envelope the man gave me. I tore it. Inside was a message. One line. If you see the sun from the wrong direction, stay still. It's watching for movement. I didn't move for an hour. The wind didn't blow. The shadows didn't shift. When the light finally dulled, I stepped back inside. The monitors turned on by themselves. 4 feeds, 4 angles. Every one of them showed the inside of the trailer, all from behind me, live. I turned in circles trying to find the cameras. There weren't any, but the feed didn't lie. On the 3rd monitor, just over my shoulder, was the chair, empty. On the 4th feed, the same angle, except now the chair wasn't. Someone was sitting in it. They weren't moving, weren't breathing, but their fingers were drumming against the armrest, the same rhythm I used when I was nervous. I didn't turn around. I just watched, until all 4 monitors blinked to static at the same time, then went black. When I blinked, the Queen of Hearts was on the desk again, and under it, a photo of me, sitting in this trailer, holding that same card. But in the picture, I was smiling, and I don't remember smiling since I got here. That was the first time I asked the question that's been stuck in my throat ever since. What if I'm not the first one to sit here? What if I've done this before? What if this isn't my first replacement? And what if I already chose? I didn't sleep that night, not even by accident. I kept the trailer lights off and sat in the corner near the door with my back against the wall, eyes fixed on the monitors even though they were dead black. I kept thinking maybe they'd come back on again. Maybe I'd catch something moving behind me before it got too close. But nothing happened. That's the part that was worse than fear. The nothing. The waiting. Around what should have been 4 in the morning, I started hearing it. A soft click, then another, not outside, under me. Something below the trailer tapping. 1, 2, 3. Then a pause. Then again. The rhythm didn't sound random. It sounded deliberate, like it was remembering a knock it used to use. I pressed my ear to the floor, and I swear to God, I heard someone breathing, not heavily, slow, calm, like they'd been there the whole time, waiting for me to notice. When I stood up, the floor creaked under my weight, and the breathing stopped, just cut off, like it didn't want to be heard anymore now that I was listening. I stepped back from the center of the room. The air in the trailer felt like it got heavier with each second, like every breath I took had to push through something thick. And then, like it had been cued by that silence, the desk drawer slid open. Inside was another card, the 3 of diamonds. This one wasn't burnt around the edges. It looked pristine, like it had just been printed, but it was damp, and the dampness didn't come from water. It smelled sweet, metallic, like blood that had sat in a warm place for too long. I left it where it was. I opened the door slowly and stepped out onto the sand. The town was dead quiet, as always, but the chapel's door, which had slammed shut 2 nights ago, was now wide open again. And this time, there was something written on the wall inside, just past the doorway, in what looked like charcoal or ash. Not a message, just a symbol, 4 shapes, 1 for each card suit. Underneath it, a line had been scratched in like someone had used a knife or fingernail. I couldn't tell what it said from the distance, and I wasn't about to get closer. But I felt something in my pocket shift. I reached in, and there it was, the Queen of Hearts. I hadn't put it there. I know I hadn't. But there it was again, warm in my hand like it had just come out of someone else's. I walked back to the trailer without looking over my shoulder. I've learned by now not to do that. There's something about this place. It doesn't like you to acknowledge what's following you. It doesn't mind being seen. It minds being recognized. When I stepped back inside, the door shut on its own, not slammed, just a slow, careful close, like it wanted me to feel chosen. The monitors turned back on. This time, they weren't showing the town. They were showing trailers, other trailers. One had mold climbing the walls and what looked like scratch marks on the inside of the door. Another had a bed that hadn't been slept in, but the blankets were perfectly folded into the shape of someone lying there. The third trailer had a man standing in the corner facing the wall. He never moved. The fourth monitor was black for a while, then flickered. And there I was, sitting at the desk, except it wasn't live. I was older, just a little, lines around the mouth, eyes that looked like they hadn't blinked in days. And I was holding a 5th card. I leaned forward, trying to see what it was. But before I could, the version of me in the feed looked up, met my eyes, and spoke. I couldn't hear what he said, but I felt it. It was the same words I heard the night before I came here, when I was packing my bag and looked at the job contract again. He said, "You've been here before. You just forgot the last time." Then the monitor went black. All of them did. And on the desk in front of me, laid out in a perfect fan, were 4 cards. The Queen of Hearts, the 2 of Spades, the 3 of Diamonds, and now, a 4th one, the Ace of Clubs. There was something written on this one, unlike the others. 1 sentence: choose before you're chosen. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I felt it settle into my chest like something inevitable, like a weight I'd always been carrying, but now it had a name. The next morning, if you could call it that, the town looked different, not visibly, structurally. It was like the air had shifted around the buildings. Like the diner wasn't where it used to be, but the ground insisted it was. And the gas station pumps were all facing the chapel now, perfectly aligned. They hadn't been before. Inside the diner, the mannequin was gone. It had been standing by the window since I arrived, watching the chapel. But now, in its place, was something else. A figure. Not human, not clearly. It was shaped like someone trying to remember what a human looked like. Its arms too long, head too still, wearing the same clothes I was wearing. It stood behind the counter like it worked there, like it was waiting to be recognized. I didn't go in. I backed away slowly and returned to the trailer. The door was already unlocked. Inside, the lights flickered once, then held. The fifth card was on the desk, the 5 of hearts. It was soaked through, the edges curled from moisture, and across the front, in handwriting that matched mine exactly, memory uploaded. I didn't remember uploading anything, but I felt the weight of it. All the moments I thought I was choosing to forget hadn't left. They'd just been copied. And that's when I realized, this place doesn't just replace you, it replicates you, over and over, until one version agrees to stay. Not because it's forced to, because it stops remembering why it shouldn't. I'm almost there. I can feel it. Sometimes, when I blink, I'm not sure if I opened my eyes again, because the view is the same, but the breath in my lungs isn't mine, not quite. And now, at night, I hear my own voice, whispering from outside the trailer, saying things I haven't said yet, like, "You'll understand when you wake up in the wrong trailer." And, "Don't resist the final card, it's already in your pocket." And once, the worst one. She's already inside, you just haven't seen her reflection yet. I stopped looking in mirrors after that, even the dark windows of the trailer. I kept the curtains drawn and the lights dim because every time I caught even the suggestion of my own shape, I wasn't sure it was just me looking back. That's the thing they don't tell you about being replaced. It doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in almosts. Almost your breath, almost your face, almost your choices. One night, at least I think it was night, I heard footsteps on the trailer roof. Not heavy, not casual, careful, deliberate. As if someone was stepping precisely in the same places I had walked earlier. Matching me, learning the pressure, the rhythm. There was no wind, no sand shifting. Just those steps, and the sound of something brushing against the metal vents overhead. Not an animal, something with fingers. Then came the knock, but not on the door. It came from the wall beside me, low, hollow, like a knuckle rapping on bone. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just waited, and the knock repeated, slower this time. Then the voice, my voice, but younger, less tired. It said, "You've made your decision." I hadn't, not consciously, but I understood what it meant. The cards were already lined up. The Queen of Hearts, the 2 of Spades, the 3 of Diamonds, the Ace of Clubs, and the 5 of Hearts. Each one marking a stage I hadn't realized I was walking through. Memory, replacement, decision, control, completion. It wasn't a warning. It was a map. The monitors came back online in unison. No flicker this time. No static. Just a single image on every screen. The chapel. Not as it looks now, but as it must have looked 100 years ago. Perfect. Restored. Alive. There were people in the pews, not moving, not talking, just sitting, all facing forward. And in the pulpit was someone I recognized. Me, smiling, not forced, not afraid, just satisfied, as if he had finally stopped resisting. He raised his hand, held up a card. It wasn't one of the 5, it was the Joker, burnt along the center fold, with no face, just blank. And he said, "One more," then pointed, not at the camera, at me. I backed away from the monitors, stumbled, hit the wall, the same wall that had knocked earlier. It was warm now, pulsing, like something behind it had a heartbeat. And I knew if I stayed, it would sync with mine. I ran. Out of the trailer, into the town that was no longer pretending to be abandoned. The lights in the diner were on. The gas station pumps hissed like breath. And in every window, someone was standing, watching, waiting, not people, versions. The ones who had chosen before me, the ones who hadn't, the ones who still thought they were deciding. I made it to the chapel steps. The door wasn't open. It was gone. Just an empty frame leading into something darker than shadow. And from inside, I heard humming. Not music. A voice. Feminine. Familiar. Singing something I used to hear as a kid. A tune that never had words, only warmth. It pulled at something inside me, something older than memory. I stepped through. No thought, no choice, just movement. Inside, the spiral of pews had returned, but this time in the center wasn't a chair. It was a hole, not dug, not carved, like the chapel had grown around it, and the air spilling from it was cold in a way that didn't belong to this world. I looked in and saw light, not blinding, welcoming, soft, flickering, like fire. And in the reflection of the flames, I saw every version I'd ever been, stacked like layers of a photograph, a child, a teenager, a man with different regrets, each one mouthing the same word, stay. I could have jumped. I think I was meant to. But instead, I stepped back, and the hole vanished. The chapel blinked, and I was outside again, standing in front of the trailer. Same boots, same wind, but the stars above me had moved, shifted, as if the sky had decided to reflect something else now. I opened the trailer door. It creaked like it hadn't in years. Inside, everything was gone. No monitors, no desk, no cards. Just a mirror, tall, full length, propped against the far wall. And in it, me. But not today's me. The version from the chapel, smiling still. He raised a hand. So did I. He lowered his. I didn't. He stepped forward. So did I. Until we met at the glass, one breath, shared, and then he whispered something. I didn't hear it in my ears. I heard it in my bones. Welcome home. And in that moment, I felt it. The town accepting me. Not as a visitor, not as a watchman, as a part of it, a fixture, an echo. And I understood what the cards were never meant to say out loud. You don't get to leave with your memory and your identity. You choose, or the town chooses for you. And once it knows who you are, once it recognizes the pattern, you're written into it, like a page in a book that never ends. So if you hear about the job, if someone offers to take you there, don't sign, don't follow, and above all, don't look in the mirror your first night, because if you do, it will look back and it won't blink, because you already did, and now you're next.